spotlight my video. So if you can give me a quick wave and just let me know that you can see me on the screen and you can hear me, okay? Fabulous. Now, I've got one eye out for the doorbell because unexpectedly the window cleaner's coming around today to do inside and outside. So I have told him he can't come in the kitchen while I'm working. And sadly, our dog's not very well today. So she's in her basket and waiting to go and see the vet. So we've got to find out what's happening with her. So by way of an introduction to you all, bearing in mind, this is the bit of the video that is going to be, I am filming, but I will chop off the bit where we've just been having a chat. And at the end, I will chop off the bit where we have another chat and we make and create. So there'll be about a half-hour video or so of me doing a demonstration. So that's why I'm being sort of a bit more formal at this stage. So hello and welcome to the first of 10 weeks of Zoom flower class, taking us through from autumn up until Christmas. So I hope you've, there's something you found on the programme that interests you. We're not doing any Christmas stories last year. I think we had stories overload during lockdown. So I'm not teaching a stories class on Zoom, but I've got plenty of videos I can direct you to if you do want to have a go at making your own stories for autumn or the festive period. And just a little, encouraging words really, that you don't have to do your flowers with me now. You're under no pressure. If you just want to sit and relax and let everything wash over you, do that. It's your time and you've spent the money on the course. But if you want to, follow along and try and copy exactly what I'm doing, that's fine as well. Or if once you've seen me do my flowers and you think, actually, I don't quite like the way that Julie did that, I'm going to change things up a bit to suit my style and the flowers I've got, that is fine as well. So I'm just here, my role is to encourage you to be creative and sort of put you on the stepping stone to doing something else. So if you don't have the flowers I've got, or you don't have the same container as me, or things are just a little bit different, all I can say is don't worry about it, we'll adapt it. So when we come to the make and create session afterwards, we can talk about what containers you've got, what are the pros and cons of them, how you'll need to adapt the technique to get your flowers to work for you. So I know that that as we had a little bit chat beforehand, that there was quite an interest in eco-friendly flowers, foam-free flowers. So we're going to be using flower foam in some of the projects over the 10 weeks. And just a word of caution, a word of a note really, that flower foam, which you probably know more commonly as Oasis, is a plastic, it's a byproduct of the petrochemical issue. So it's not very good for the environment. It's a single-use plastic. And as it breaks down, we end up with microplastics ending up in our soil. So that is why I've tried to limit the use of flower foam in the course, but I haven't excluded it altogether because I know that loads of you who do flower arranging love using flower foam. It's really convenient. And I'm just trying to wean you off it a little bit and show you that there are other alternatives. So for everything I do, there will be a foam on the whole, can't say everything. Most of the projects I do will have a foam-free alternative, and we can talk about that and adapt that. But for next week, we're definitely doing a foam-free arrangement. And while we're on the subject of next week, I have got a container for next week because we're going to make an arrangement in a windowsill vase. So again, don't panic at this point. If you don't have a long, narrow container like this, you could substitute something. So a gravy boat, or perhaps you've got a loaf tin that you make cakes in, something like that, or you've got a casserole dish. We're just going for something that is, a little bit longer and narrow. So, long and narrow. And if you have one of these vases, that would be great. If you don't, we will work around it. So I've got quite a few of these vases now, and those of you who follow me will know that I love going to the charity shop. And sometimes I find really exciting finds, and I get so excited that I don't take the prices off. So that was £4 for this 1970s Cairo design, and I think it was by Arthur Wood. So I need to stop throwing it around because someone's obviously been heavy-handed, and I think the base is chipping. I'm going to move that out of my way so I'm not tempted to knock it. Your choice of flowers every single week. So whether it's a bunch in the supermarket, just a seasonal bunch in the supermarket, whether you've got something you can grow from your, you've got something in your garden still, And again, those of you who know me will know that I have hardly any flowers in my garden, so I do struggle a bit for flowers. If you want to use artificial flowers, if you want to use dried flowers, and over my shoulder, I'll show you what I'll be using. These are a few bits and pieces that we walk the dog at the weekend after my scissors in my hand, and I cut half a dozen stems of things that I found growing in the hedgerow. So if you are tempted to go foraging, again, it's words of warning all the time. You need to be not trespassing. You need to have the consent of the landowner. You need just to take the few stems you need, not denude the whole bush. And you need to be aware of any wildlife restrictions. But it's a bit like blackberry picking. You take a few blackberries because you know you just need, you know, half a pound to make some jam, and you leave the rest for the birds and for anyone else that wants to pick. So I try and forage responsibly. So just be aware that there are rules and regulations around that. So shall we get on with today's class? So first of all, I'm interested to know, are you staying afterwards to make and create? If you are, leave me a yes in the comments, and then we can just gauge who's going to stay with me afterwards. So let me talk to you about the pot I'm going to be using. I'm going to use what I've called a footed container. So it's a container that's lifted up a little bit. And this is a really great way of adding space to your arrangements. You can imagine you've got all your flowers and your greenery up here. And if it lies flat on the floor, it can just look a little bit flat and dull. But as soon as we lift the container up, I can sort of feel myself lifting myself up. It looks much more elegant, and you've got space sort of between the flowers and your tabletop, and that all adds to the elegance and to the dramatic impression that your flowers are creating. You're getting more sort of bang for your buck because it looks, you know, so much better when it's been lifted up a little bit. I'm quite conscious that perhaps you don't have a container like this. So don't let that put you off. Don't not come to class because you haven't got the right container. You can mock things up a little bit. So I've been raiding my kitchen cupboards, and I've got a breakfast bowl. So you think, well, Julie, that's just a flat container. But perhaps when you finish your arrangement, you could stack it up on some books. Or I've got my Christmas pudding bowl and carefully stack it up, because obviously they're just balanced on the top. But that could be, you know, a make-do for a footed container. So you've got the arrangement lifted up off the table surface, so it just looks more elegant. So please don't worry that you haven't got the right containers. It'll keep us all on our feet as we try and make suggestions for how you could interpret the project for the container you've got. I'm getting some lovely yeses that people are staying. That's brilliant. If you're not staying, can you just leave? I know I should be able to work that out. Just leave me a no, because during the question and answer session, if you can't stay later, I'll come to you first with the Q&A, because I know normally one of our ladies who isn't here today watches this during her lunch break. She's working from home, so we normally go to her first because she's on a tight restriction with her lunch break. So there is my container. I'm going to lift that up and rest across. I've just got a turntable just so you can see the container. I've got a block of flower foam. So this is a standard block of flower foam. If you've used it before, you might have noticed it's got a little nick halfway, and it's got these lines that divide the block in thirds. So if you cut down the lines, they fit exactly into one of the plastic dishes, one of the square round bowls. And I don't like using those bowls because it's more plastic, and I'd much rather make an arrangement, a container that it looks, even if it's a cereal bowl, but just something that looks more personal to me and fits in with the decor I've got at home. And I'm going to shuffle those across because I've just blocked off what I'm going to be using. So I might stand up and show you this bit. Let me introduce you to my flowers for this week. So I've got a variety of greenery in my little jug here. I've got some fennel that I've picked up, and some buried ivy. I absolutely love buried ivy. We've got this growing in our garden. I love the way that it's got the small flowers now, the bees are after them, and then it develops into bigger and bigger berries towards Christmas time. So mine at the moment are quite green, but Christmas time they'll be really, lush looking berries. Those of you who've got young children and pets in the house, just be aware that berries, the temptation to eat them, please don't eat your flower arrangement, so just be cautious around them. And if you are actually physically using berries in your arrangement, they will ripen over time and get a bit mushy. And if you're, I don't want them dropping, just be mindful of that. If they drop off and you walk over them, you're going to end up with a squishy mess. So just like everything, is always a little bit of a health and safety warning. I've also picked up some skimmia. So I was rather lucky on my dog walk at the weekend, if I can get that out of the vase. I think everything is going to fall out. The little skimmia there. I bumped into a gentleman who was clearing out the front garden of the bungalow, and he had a black bag full of skimmia. So I said, oh, would you mind if I took a few stems? So I got some skimmia as well. I've also got some viburnum tinus and some, well, perhaps you can tell me what that is. Let me know in the comments and then I'll come back to you and tell you whether you were right. So that's a little sort of seed head at the top there. So it's a different shape, and I've also got some little colourful stems there. So probably I won't be using all this greenery. I've only got that top surface of my little urn to fill up. So that's my green. And then I thought, oh, as it's autumn time, let's go for something nice and crisp and seasonal. So I have got here, it's all going to fall apart. If I take it out like that, that'll work better. These are dried flower heads. So I was given these by a lady in Flower Club a few weeks ago. It's Brunia, which is the South African foliage. You quite often see that in a supermarket bunch. And in the fresh state, it's like a grey white colour. And I thought they were quite an interesting shape. And again, I might not use all this. I've got some dried flower heads. That's Achillea, or the yarrow. And that was off my dog walk. And then helicopters. So the little seed heads from, I think it's from the ash tree. And I've got some little seed heads here, and I'm dropping seed heads all over the floor. And for the ladies that came to class last time round, some of the Jerusalem sage with the lovely star-shaped pods there. And I've got some lichen branches and a few other bits and pieces, which are now mainly scattered across my kitchen floor. Those to one side. And then you'll say, well, what about your flowers? You keep talking about your flowers. So I've got very limited flowers. And in fact, I didn't buy any flowers, especially for class. In fact, that looks like a finished arrangement already, but I've just grouped everything together in a bowl. I've got some sunflowers, and these came from the supermarket, and they're absolutely gorgeous because they're so small. And I've had those in a table arrangement, and I've just thrown away all the other flowers. I thought I can use those, get a bit more life out of those. I've got a tiny head of hydrangea. Oops, I need to make sure I've muted you. Oops, mute all. Yeah, sorry, should have done that earlier. And so the hydrangea, little head there. I've actually got some fake grapes because a lady from Flower Club gave me these fake grapes, which I thought were fun. I may not add them in. And I've got some little heads of sedum. So these were used at a class I taught last night. And they're the side shoots I didn't need. So I won't throw them away because I could use them for class. So I just got lots of little bits and pieces. There's nothing special there. And actually, I haven't specifically spent any money on the flowers for today, because I've found what I want, and with what I've already got at home. There's a great phrase going around at the moment about shop your home. So just see what you've got already. Don't feel that you've got to go out and spend pounds and pounds and pounds on flowers that you're not quite sure about. So it's always why, set yourself a budget, and perhaps one week you might spend a bit more. The following week you could think, actually, I'm just going to reuse what I had last week, or look for other things that you can find around your garden. I'm going to set that to one side, and the first thing I need to do is to get my flower foam into my container. So I will keep the camera facing me for the moment, and I will show you how I'm going to decide how much flower foam I use. And for those of you who I know are new, you're right, it was Buddleia. You're right, well done, ladies. I will show you how to soak your foam. So I realised that those of you who are more experienced will know how to do this. So it won't take very long to do this. So I've got myself a jug of water. I would strongly advise you just run a bowl of water. So I normally do this in my washing up bowl in the utility room. So the first thing that I would do, I'm going to just get that out of sight for the moment, is look at my container and think, well, how much foam do I need? And because it's not a floristry design container, I need to think and measure up how much flower foam I need to put in to my container. So I've got on the side an old table knife that I use, and I'm going to cut my piece of foam to the right size. So I'm only going to cut off the foam that I'm going to use. If you soak the whole block and then think, oh, I'm only going to use half of it or a third of it, once the flower foam has dried out, you can't use it again. So if you do soak too much, what you need to do is the bit you have soaked, you need to wrap it up in a sealed bag and then try and keep it moist until you're ready to use it. So I'm holding up here and trying to work out from the size of this, what shall I do? So I reckon if I put that over the top of my container, that I reckon if I cut my foam, for me, between the third mark and the half mark, I reckon that'll be enough. So using it, I'll just cut that up on here actually so you can see what I'm doing. So it makes a squeaky noise, this. So it might be like reminding you back at school when you had chalkboards. So it cuts through, so I can save that piece for another day. And the other piece, I'm just going to measure it up first of all, just to see whether it fits. So it's standing up quite proud, and I want it to be a little bit lower. So I can't squeeze it down with my hand because the container's shaped. So what I'm going to do is to use my knife and cut off some of the corners. Just take a little bit of a knife there, and I'm shaping the corners. So we would call that chamfering. So you can just see the square edges have been taken off it, and I'd fix it in there. I'm thinking, oh, is that fitting okay? I think I can probably take a little bit more off. So just go little by little, because if you keep carving your foam and you take off too much at once, it's not going to have enough of water to keep your flowers alive. So I think probably that's about right. So I want my foam just to stick up a little bit above my container. So I'm now ready with this rather peculiar shape of foam to start soaking it. So imagine that I've got a washing up bowl full of water, my jug. And what you do is take your flower foam, run quite a deep bowl of water, because I know I'm going to hit a problem in a minute with this, because my jug is shaped. You just set it on top. So don't be tempted to push the foam down. It will soak of its own accord. And in fact, if you push your foam down, it will take up water on the outside edge, but you won't be able to guarantee it's got water going all the way through the middle. So any of your fresh materials that are going to be aiming for the middle of your foam will be in dry foam, and they won't last so long. So you can see there, it's all soaked down, but it doesn't take very long to do. And when I lift it out, it's a little bit heavy. And you need to make sure if you are doing this at your sink, take containers for sinks, so you're not dripping water all over the floor. So I then push that down, and now I can just sort of wedge it in with my hands. I'm not being overly firm with it because I don't want to crush the flower foam. I'm just going to move this water out of the way. So what I want to do now is it's fitted nicely, and I then take off the corners at the top as well. So using my knife, I'm just taking off a little wedge shape like that, a little triangle around the corner. If you forget to do this, it doesn't matter, but it just means you've got a more rounded area, more surface area to put your flowers on, and it's much easier to put your flowers into a flat surface than trying to aim them into the corner of your foam. You then need to decide whether your foam is firmly secured. So my foam does feel quite secure because most of it is sort of in the body of the container. But if for any reason you're using, perhaps you're going for the cereal bowl mock-up, you might find it wobbles around a bit, and in which case you would want to use some tape to hold your flower foam in place. So I'll just show you how to do that. It's probably a bit belt and braces for the one I've got, but I'll show you anyway. So what I'm going to do is take the tape, so it's like a waterproof sellotape, and it's dark, and I'm putting it over my foam, and then I'm putting it actually right onto the container. It has to stick onto your container as well. And you can see there that as soon as I use the tape, I then get a really unsightly mark. So this is another reason not to use the tape, because you've got to then cover it up with some of your fresh materials. I can probably make that one a little bit shorter. Let's just cut that one down a tiny bit. So my foam is firmly held in place. I've made myself 2 parallel lines, but it doesn't look very good from that side. But what I could do is just peel it back a bit, and I could trim it even shorter. If you trim it too short, it's just going to ping off. So what I need to do is think, I just need to remember where the tape is, and perhaps drape those grapes over it, drape a big leaf over it, just so it's not obvious. You want to hide the tape. And this would be your mechanics. So we're going to be having got our water source firmly fixed in place with our tape. That's our mechanics done. But then we're going to spend much of the creative process hiding the mechanics so we can't see them. And what I'm going to do here to help me hide is I'm going to twist my container around. So yes, I know this tape here is a bit unsightly. But if I turn the container around so that I'm working with this at the front, you can't see it so much. And also, I've got the nice width of my foam to work through. So it's just a cheat, really, that, you know, would you rather have your arrangement look like that and all you're going to notice the 2 bits of tape, or would you put it on the side? So I would just say, once you've done your mechanics, sorted your tape out, just have a look before you start putting things in and think, you know, where is the front of my container? Quite likely with a nice circular container, you might be doing something that's an all-round design, so you will need to be careful about how your positioning of your plant materials and so on. So the next thing I'm going to do now is bring in my overhead camera, and there'll just be a bit of shuffling around while I log in. I can just hear the window cleaner up above me on the kitchen. Hopefully he's not going to distract me too much, and then we'll get going. So what you'll be able to see is a bird's eye view of me doing my arrangement. So just bear with me a moment. So here we are with our mechanics in place, the flower foam, the 2 sections of tape, and this blank canvas of what we're going to be working with. Now, normally when I do my flower arrangements, I start off with all my greenery first, and then I add my flowers in. Because we're sort of doing an autumn bounty, a harvest festival of autumn, and I haven't got loads of foam, I'm going to break my rule and start to put some of my flowers in first, and then fill out with the greenery. So just doing things a little bit differently. So I'm going to start perhaps with some of these little sunflowers and to put them in. So what the first thing I do with my sunflowers is they're tiny, actually, quite unusually small, but there is a little bit of difference in size. So I am going to put the smallest sunflowers towards the outer edge and have my bigger sunflower going towards the middle. So if you're new to flower arranging, that's a really good principle to have. You want your main flower, your wow flower, what we would call the focal flower, to be at the heart of the arrangement, so your eye lands on it. And then everything comes a little bit smaller and finer to the outer edges. So if I was going to line these up, I would probably go something like that. And you can sort of see that there's a big one, a middle-sized one, and then the smaller one over here. So cutting my flowers quite short and recut them at an angle, so it makes it easier to put them into the flower foam, but also it means they take up water more easily. So I'm squeezing carefully, trying to put the stem in rather than pushing from the flower head, because otherwise I will damage it. Recut the stem again. And I'm going to make little groupings. So can you see here that I want to put this flower in, and I just feel the need, I need to hold on to the pot a little bit, just so I've got something to brace against. And then my little one at the edge, take off that little bit of leaf, recut the stem. I might have that one as if it's tumbling out of the container. So here, and as I want to push it in, I'm sort of feeding it down. I'm holding, imagine this is the stem, I'm sort of feeding it down, feeding it down, feeding it down, rather than pushing it from the flower head. So I've got a little grouping. It's as if I'm going to sort of have this little garden of flowers and grouping it all over. Now, because this is going to be an all-round arrangement, and I have got one of the sunflowers left, I'm going to put the last one in around the back, so you get to see something around the back there. So that's nice and firmly in. So it doesn't look like much at all at the moment, and it won't look like much until you start to put in, you know, lots and lots of flowers, until you start to cover up the greenery. So don't panic when you think, I've got 4 things in and it doesn't look very good. It will change and look fuller as time progresses. So where I've got this little sunflower here peeking over the edge of the container, I want to follow that through with having some greenery draping around the edges to cover up these pieces of tape. And what I like using for this is my buried ivy. Can you see how it just naturally has this arching quality to it? So I'm going to keep things quite short. I'm going to get rid of those lower leaves I pull off, because we always want a clean stem put into the foam. That just means a stem without any greenery on it. So I hold it up and I think I want it about there. I'm going to cut it to length. So when you push your stems into the foam, it's probably only going in by a couple of centimetres. You don't want to be pushing, 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 pushing and have 10 centimetres stem inside the foam. Number one, because you run the risk that you're going to break your plant material. But number two, you're going to end up with too many stems all interlocked in the middle of the foam. And when you want to put in that last fantastic piece of material, you won't be able to put it in because it'll be clogged. So I'm going to make a little grouping here, and they arch over the edge of the container. So I'm cutting from my vase of greenery, coming down, that will start to cover up the foam there. And then I'm going to bring a piece, they've all drooped over the edge, and bring a little piece a little bit towards the centre. So it's almost like a wedge of cake. Imagine that's a green wedge of buried ivy with my wedge of sunflowers over here. And then what else have I got? Well, I'm looking through my little tray of goodies. I've got some sedum here. So this is out from my garden. This will actually dry as well, so it's quite a nice material to use, very seasonal, and I'll do exactly the same thing. So where shall I start with my sedum? Recut the stem. I might have a little bit draping over here, and I'm going to make a little path running through my arrangement. So a little bit there, perhaps a little bit over there. This bit's really short. So what's really good in flower arranging is sometimes to recess things, and that means to put them down a little bit low. So your eye is sort of bouncing around and it suddenly drops down to something, and then it'll come up the other side. So I'm going to do a little, it's like I'm creating a little fairy path going through my arrangement. Like that. And then what else shall I use? Well, I did talk about my fake grapes. What do you reckon? I'm not entirely sure. I think they might be a little bit odd. So we'll have to have a think about those. But what I was thinking was that these berries here were draping down, and perhaps I could replicate that look by having my grapes sort of mirroring that look over there. So I think I might put them in when we do our make and create afterwards. I'm not entirely sure at the moment. Let's come back in now with some more greenery. So the skimmer next. So this skimmer is going to cover up some of that flower foam. It's got this lovely flower head and then it's sort of a circle of leaves. But can you see some of the leaves have gone a bit yellowy? I'm going to pull those off. I want everything in my flower arrangement to look perfect. But look how great the colour is of the skimmer with the sedum. So you start to create some linkages here. Your eye is bouncing around and looking for something. It likes to make patterns and it's looking for something to match it up with. So I'm not going to put it too close to the skimmer because the colour's too similar. But what I could do is feed it through the little gaps that are left around the larger sunflowers and have a little line going through that way. And making sure I'm putting some pieces in this piece here, I've put it in horizontally. Can you see how it's resting practically resting on the rim of the container. So not everything needs to go in upright. Think about your placements and think sometimes you can have them going upright, sometimes at 45-degree angle, sometimes horizontally, and it just that lovely flow of the materials. I've only got a few stems left of this. I might as well put all of it in. So it's just one little part and starting to fill out a little bit there. And then, of course, I look down and I can see a gap here, and I can see a gap over here and over here and over here. So I'm then thinking, well, what should I put in there? What of my materials can I add in? I've got this absolutely gorgeous fennel. So the seed heads will dry eventually. Just going to rub off the little bits that have gone to seed. So it's perfect. But it's got a little, it almost got the look of the buried ivy, that same umbrella-first look. And it's got a bit of yellow there. I might have that, perhaps just rising up above slightly. So it doesn't have to be a flat arrangement, not like, an old-fashioned swimming hat that your granny might have worn. You could think about bringing things a little bit higher. So there with the fennel down there, a little bit higher. I'm standing up looking at this. So when I sit down, I will have a look and see whether I think that looks right. Of course, anything you put into the foam, you don't like the placement of it, you can take it out and put it back in, but just don't spend ages in, out, because you'll make really big holes in your foam. And then when you finally got your piece exactly where you want it, you'll take your hand away and it'll fall to one side. So I need to just think about that, and we'll have a look at that when I bring the camera back to my face, whether that's in the right place or not. So I'm looking at all my other goodies. Shall I use the Brunia seed head? I could go really short. Now this might be something I might want to glitz up. If I had any spray paint, I could imagine, just a little bit gold or silver on there. So push that down. I'm going to tuck it right in, like that. And then it's providing a really lovely contrast between the silky petals on the sunflower, and it's very rough and round. And in fact, I'm thinking now it's sort of like a dried version of the inside of the sunflower there. So do I want one piece, or should I come back with another? So I haven't just got something that's sort of lost on its own. So put it in there. I'm not going to put it together. Perhaps I should bring it back round and over this corner here and really recess it and have a look at it again. And I'm not quite sure about that, so I can take it out and leave it to one side. I might come back in with some of the Jerusalem sage. Now that would be something I could rest down there. I might sort of have a whole fireworks of Jerusalem sage coming out at the side. So they're a funny seed head because it's like pom-poms. So this one's just got one head, but the first one I put in had the flower head lower down as well. So that flower head low down is covering up the foam, and then you just get this light and airy bit that is popping up above. I might have a little grouping of those. And I've got some lovely berries. So these are Hypericum berries. You might be lucky enough to have these in your garden. There's one that's just gone over, so I'll pinch off that little stem. And I might nestle that down really low. And then perhaps bring another bit out to the side, just so your eye starts to travel around. Again, I'm always cutting out anything that doesn't look really lush and gorgeous. Have the confidence to cut it out a little bit. Oh, I'm thinking I might take the fennel out. We'll have to wait and see. So this little bit of hydrangea. Again, it's bringing about the lovely pinks. So I've got the pink from the skimmia, the pink from the hydrangea, and then the pink of the sedum as well. And what we need to do as you work round is, if you've got a definite front, always bring the front back to you so you know where it is. But when you think you've nearly finished, you need to look at it. Can you see I've got gaps of foam here, which I need to fill in? There's another gap over there. And that's because I've always been arranging from the front and I've missed those out. So I need to think about other things that could flow out. So am I going to put my buddleia in? I'm not quite sure about that. Oh, I've got some lovely little reed grasses. These will probably blow. They will probably develop into the seed heads and fly away a little bit. But perhaps for today I could enjoy them. I might have those just coming out over the edge of the container. I think I've got 3 of those. So I could make a little grouping of those. They look quite feathery. You're reminding me of the texture of feathers, and you think about the pheasants going up and down the lanes. Little grouping there. And then my sycamore, my helicopters. You know, can I find a place for those? Perhaps they would look better draped over the edge than my grapes. I think the grapes are actually a bit visually heavy. So I'm going to save those and I'll show you how I'll fix those in with a piece of wire in a moment. So I'm just going to go around the edge, and I've got a bit of flow here. I feel I need a bit of flow on the other side as well. So let's see if we've got one more piece of buried ivy. If I feed my way down, I can just get that to come out. So that's sort of just what we call breaking the edge of the container. So it's like you're marrying the two together. You haven't got your container at the bottom and then your flowers at the top. They all merge together. So I think probably I've got nearly as much as I can fit. I'm picking up on these pinks again. Just those little gaps in the flower foam right round at the back. Take off the leaves, so it's just the clean stem that goes in, and feed those in quite low at the back. Their job today is to cover up the foam rather to make a sort of impactful statement. So I shall put those in there, and there's just a little damage on that leaf there, so I can pinch that off. That can go down there, the back, and then there's a tiny little gap over here. So what have I got to fit in there? I know what. I have got my Viburnum tinus. Again, that little pink colour comes back to us. I take away the leaf that's damaged. So this is quite a nice greenery to have, a single stem, and then it's got that sort of rosette shape of greenery around it, and that just fills in that little gap there. And then I notice there's another little gap there, so the next bit of Viburnum tinus can go in there. So I have filled all the surface of my container. So what I need to do now, and what I would urge you to do when you've finished your flower arrangements, is tidy up. First of all, it gets very messy around your arrangements, and then you almost need to go and make yourself a cup of tea, so that when you come back and look at your flowers, it looks like, you know, you're coming back with clean eyes. You're not seeing the mess anymore. You've taken a step back, and you can just have a really good look at your flower arrangement to see where the gaps are, whether it looks balanced, whether it looks finished. So as I tuck these ends back into my container, I will bring the camera back to me, and then we'll see from a distance whether anything needs adjusting, changing, or tweaking around, and I'll show you how you could fit in some more elements to drape over the edge of your container. So I will need just to clear away because it is getting quite complicated around here. I'm just brushing it onto the kitchen floor. So I'm going to stop this overhead camera now, and then I'll shuffle around and then come back to you with my facing camera. So this is what I was working on, so just a different vantage point. So I hope you can see that clearly against my jumper. I should stand up a little bit like that, but you can see the fennel that I wasn't quite sure about from up above. But when you see it in silhouette, that it adds an extra dimension to your flower arrangement. So sometimes things do look different when you've changed around. And in fact, that is the back view that you're looking at, because I know exactly where I'm going to put this arrangement. It's going to go actually against a wall. So that's another good thing to think about when you're working on your flowers, is to just think, where am I going to put them? If it's on the coffee table, yes, it has to look good all the way around. But if it's going to be against a wall, you have to have covered your foam. But of course, I would save all the good bits for the front where you're actually going to be able to see them. I think actually it does look best, doesn't it, against my, I'll have to wear a big black jumper next week against my nice shirt there. And then you have a look and see, well, are there any holes? You know, I've got a little bit of drapage here with my ivy. Do I need? I thought that was going to be really fun with the fake grapes there, but they're too shiny, they're too big, and they're probably just too fake. So perhaps I should keep it all natural. And if I wanted a little bit of a flow coming over that side, perhaps my sycamores would be the best thing to do. So let's try and fix those in place. So I'm going to do the floristry wire to do that. So I just need to get one out of my little bag here. So very thin floristry wire, so it's probably about a 0.71 wire. And I'm going to use that to create a long stem for my sycamore. So I'm going to take off some of the heads. Look, it's got a little bend in that there. So I'm going to take my wire. I'm not sure how I can show you that best. By making a cross, my natural stem's going across, my wire's gone up and down, and then I bend the wire. I've effectively created a little shepherd's hook there. And then I take the long end and I wrap it round 2 or 3 times. So I've now given myself a flexible stem for that piece of plant material. So I need to push this around here so I can see what I'm doing, and then put the stem in. So I'm treating it as if it's a stem of a natural flower. And sometimes I have to go in with my finger and lift up something. So I'm just lifting up the sunflower just gently because I don't want to damage it. And then I'm pushing the piece of wire into the flower foam so it sits naturally. There we go. And yes, that has achieved what I wanted it to do. So it's just quite a precarious angle, but of course this is dried material, so it doesn't need to be in the flower foam, it's just going to stay there. So it just balances out visually. I've got something draping here and covering up my tape, and something draping here nearly covering up my tape, but it just adds a little bit of a flow really, so you don't get the flower arrangement all up here and the container down here. It's sort of got something that's cuddling over it. There's a few things that I didn't put in my arrangement. I picked some blackberries. I thought, oh, wouldn't that be great? But of course they're prickly and they're going to ripen and fall off. But you know, that might have been quite nice, silhouetted against the container there, so you really see them. I could be daring and fashionable and just lay them on the top as a, you know, like an extra layer. And that's part of the reason why I picked up the lichen covered branches as well. I just thought for an added extra detail with the yellow of the lichen talking to the yellow of my sunflowers and the little yellow of my fennel, I could, you know, artfully lay my sticks over the top, which sort of creates another level to look at. And I'll have all my friends saying, Julie, why have you got sticks in your flower arrangements? So that brings us to the end of just this recorded session of the class. Laura, you're asking me if I can show you the stick. I can do, and I'll do that right now. So I'm conscious that this is really fine. So how about I move this out of the way? I can put that there. And let me get really, really close. So you actually, do you want, I'm going to bring the camera back in over again. So I've got my, I'm going to use something exaggeratedly large, Laura, to show you. So that was my stem. I wanted to attach the bendy bit of wire to. So that's my piece of wire. And it's quite, lift it up, it's quite narrow. So what I normally do is put it crossways and bend this wire down. The easiest way of doing it as well is to just hold it towards the end and pinch it back. So it's, this is what I call the shepherd's crook. You imagine on your nativity scene. And then you lay that on top of your stem and then take the long part and you wrap it around. So that has elongated your stem. If I hang it up like that, it'll dangle. So that was the way to do it, and it works really well when, especially when you've got you know, dried materials or artificial materials, because it's giving an elongated stem. But if that material needs to be in water in your flower foam or your water reserve, it's not going to work so much, because the point is when I've actually put mine in the container, it probably went in something like that. You know, so the cut stem was nowhere near the flower foam. So it's something that you'd use for your decorative materials. And if you find that your stem doesn't sit properly in your flower foam, sometimes I bend up that other end as well, and it just sort of locks in place a little bit. So I shall take that other spotlight off and come back. I'm just going to close that one down for a minute. So I can show you that again if it's not clear, but hopefully that has inspired you to get creative. So we called it was an Autumn Bounty, flowers in a footed container. So it's like you're creating your own little harvest festival, and you don't need to spend loads of money on it. So as you know, these are offcuts and other arrangements, things I've found in my garden, things I've picked up from the floor on footpaths when I've been walking at the weekend. So I'm going to sign off the recorded part of the class now. So I will see you all next week with your windowsill vases and again your selection of autumn beauties, and we will make an arrangement without using flower foam, so it'll be a little more eco-friendly.